Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yavad Otpatiko Rishto Brajam Nabhi Bhavet Itaha Tavad Balan Upadaya Yasyamon Yatra Sanuga Yavad. So long. Opatikaha. Disturbing. Arishta. Demon. Brajam. This Gokul Brajabhumi. Not. Abhibhavet. Itaha. Go away from this place. Tavat. So long. Balan. Upadaya. For the benefit of the boys. Yasyamaha. We shall go. Anyatra. Somewhere else. Sa anuga. With our followers. All these incidents are being caused by some unknown demon. Before he comes here to create another disturbance, it is our duty to go somewhere else with the boys until there are no more disturbances. Purport. Upananda suggested, purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Radhanath Swami, Prabhupada. Upananda suggested, by the mercy of Lord Vishnu, Krishna has always been saved from so many dangerous incidents. Now let us leave this place and go somewhere else where we may worship Lord Vishnu undisturbed. Before there is another cause of death from some demon who may attack us. A devotee desires only that he may execute devotional service undisturbed. Actually, we see, however, that even during the presence of Krishna, when Nanda Maharaj and the other cowherd men had the Supreme Personality of Godhead in their presence, there were disturbances. Of course, in every case, Krishna came out victorious. The instruction we may derive from this is that we should not be disturbed by so-called disturbances. There have been so many disturbances to our Krishna consciousness movement, but we cannot give up our forward march. On the contrary, people are receiving this movement very enthusiastically all over the world, and they are purchasing literature about Krishna consciousness with redoubled energy. Thus, there are both encouragements and disturbances. This was so even in Krishna's time. All these incidents are being caused by some unknown demon. Before he comes here to create another disturbance, it is our duty to go somewhere else with the boys until there are no more disturbances. We are reading from 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 11, entitled The Childhood Pastimes of Krishna, verse number 27. We are continuing from yesterday. Srila Sukadeva Goswami is narrating the inconceivable, all-attractive pastimes of Krishna. When the Arjuna trees, two enormous trees, generally when trees get older, they become wider and taller. In California, there are redwood trees. Some are over 2,000 years old. And if 40 people, grown adults, hold their hands, they could hardly make a circle around that tree. Humans, we grow, and then as we get older, we shrink. It's like we're little seeds in the womb of mother. Then we grow into a little embryo. Then we come out a baby. And then we just, somehow or other, we're totally dependent on our mothers and our fathers for our survival, and we grow through childhood. Dehinosmin yata dehi komaram yovanam jana. But we're the same person. This is basic teaching of Bhagavad Gita, that the embodied soul, which is eternal, ahanyate hanyamane saride, it never dies, and it's never born. It's actually always the same. In the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the analogy is given of the moon. On Amavasya, it's like the invisible moon. We call it new moon or no moon. Then it starts growing, becomes quarter moon, half moon, and it becomes full moon. Then it starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller until another Amavasya. But actually the moon is always a full moon. It's not that the moon gets bigger or smaller. It's just our perception. So similarly, the soul, Mamayvam so jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. We are part of Krishna. Krishna is eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. And similarly, the soul is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. But when we identify with these physical bodies and minds, it appears that there's changes. It appears that I am growing old. We say growing old. We go through our adolescence. The soul is just watching all this. Through the ahankar, through the ego, we're thinking, I am that. Then we get middle-aged. Some of us stay brahmacharis. Others, they have husbands, they have wives, they have children, they have grandchildren. And you see the grandchildren getting bigger and bigger. But then when you look in the mirror, you see you're getting smaller and smaller. So we grow into old age and then we shrink in old age. That's the nature of human life. But Krishna, he descends into this world especially to remind us of what our real goal is. Atato Brahmajigyasa. That the human form of life is meant to understand Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. We are Brahman. We are eternal. And we are eternal servants of Para Brahman, the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has appeared in his full opulences to reveal the pastimes of Vrindavan as Krishna. So when these Arjuna trees, which were thousands of years old, many, many thousands of years old, when Narada Muni cursed Nala Kuvera and Manigriva, he had such a long-term plan. Sometimes we think that everything should go according to our plan. We want the results of our pursuits immediately, or if not immediately, very soon. But what Krishna's perception of very soon is, and what our perception of very soon is, are not always the same. Krishna promises, one who understands my birth and activities will never take birth in this material world, but will attain my abode. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's Krishna himself, he repeats this promise. Just chant the holy names of Krishna, remember Krishna. Very soon you will attain this perfection. So when we hear very soon, we think tomorrow. Or somehow or other, I might be able to struggle to tolerate material existence till next year. But very soon. In the next stories of Srimad Bhagavatam, we find Srila Prabhupada is giving his last commentaries on the Brahma Vimoha Lila. Brahma is just insignificant, tiny little part of Krishna. For him, when he stole the calves and the gopas, the cowherd children, he put them in a cave and made them sleep. And he came back in one moment because he was afraid to wait any longer. He came back in one moment. And that moment for Brahma was 1 year by earth calculations. Hare Krishna. So what is a moment for Krishna? In the spiritual world, Srila Prabhupada told, time is conspicuous by its absence. That means there is no influence of time. But at the same time, it seems that there is. Because Krishna wakes up, and Yashoda Maya is very punctual to bathe him. Why does Yashoda Maya bathe Krishna? Krishna's pavitra. Oma pavitra pavitro va sarvavastam gatopi va yasmaret pundarikaksham sabhaya vyantara suchi. Krishna is supremely pure. He's infinitely, eternally pure. He's so pure that any way you connect with him, you become purified. Even the most wicked asuras, by coming in contact with Krishna, they become purified and attain liberation of one sort or another. So how could the Supreme Pure ever be dirty? He never is dirty. But still, when Krishna was a little child, along with Balaram, the first expansion, the cause of all causes, the source of Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Kshirodakshay Vishnu, they're playing like little children. They're crawling, and they're crawling through the mud of Vrindavan. And Sukadeva Goswami tells what was their clothes in their baby childhood. When Yashoda Mai and Rohini Devi would lift them up, they were clothed with the dirt of Vrindavan. And that dirt of Vrindavan was very much covering their bodies because it was moistened by the cow dung and the cow urine of the cows and the calves. And sometimes Krishna and Balaram, they would be crawling, and they'd see a little calf, and Krishna would grab the tail of one calf, and Balaram would hold on to the tail of another calf, and the calf would become so afraid, who is pulling my tail, because it's behind. The calf would jump up and start to run, and Krishna and Balaram, in the form of little babies crawling, they became afraid because the calf was moving so fast, they were afraid to let go of the calf's tail. Queen Kunti, in her prayers, she was meditating like this. Krishna is feared by time personified. Feared by fear personified. An expansion and expansion and expansion, and a temporary expansion of Krishna is the Virat Rupa. He was quite fearful. Even Arjuna, the most fearless warrior in this universe, was fearful when he saw the universal form. Limitless heads, limitless arms, limitless legs. He saw all the soldiers in the battlefield of Kurukshetra being devoured by the mouths of the Virat Rupa, and fire blazing, and sun and moon. Unbelievable. The effulgence of the Virat Rupa. Arjuna had to say, please take this form away. I want to see my friend again. Krishna became four-armed Vishnu, and then the source of all incarnations, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, Krishna. So when Krishna's little baby, just by his thought, he manifests the form of Virat Rupa. And yet when he's holding on to the little calf tail, he's afraid. Is he pretending to be afraid? He's afraid. He's not afraid. But if Krishna can do anything he likes, he's Achyuta, he's inexhaustible, he's Ananta, he's infinite, he's Achintya. He can do anything he wants. Abhigya Swarat, he's fully independent. So Krishna's the source of all fearlessness. Bhajahure mana srinandanandana abhaya charanada vindare. Govinda Das, the great Vaishnava poet, has prayed, my dear Sri Nanda Nandana, when I meditate upon and worship your lotus feet, I become fearless. while he's making all his devotees fearless. If he's fully independent, if he likes, he could be fearful. We cannot understand this with our mundane intelligence. But with faith and realistic intelligence, we can accept the inconceivable potencies of Krishna. And for the sake of Leela, that Leela Shakti of the Lord, loving pastimes, especially in Vrindavan, just to increase the love of his devotees and increase the sweetness of his love for the devotees, which is ever increasing. Krishna assumes so many apparent contradictions. He's the absolute truth. But then when Yashoda Maya asked, "Did you eat dirt?" he said, "No, I did not eat dirt." Even Balaram, the original guru, says that you ate dirt. Balaram is angry with me. He's trying to get me in trouble, but I didn't eat dirt. But according to Shukadev Goswami, he did eat dirt. So how can the absolute truth lie? The absolute truth cannot lie. But if he wants, he could lie. But it's not a lie. He's Krishna. Just to increase his mother's motherly affection and just to increase his own reception of his mother's affection. He's speaking higher truths than is possible to conceive within the dualities of this world. So when Krishna and Balaram would be pulled by the calves, they would be sliding through the cow dung, the cow urine, also from the bulls, and the muddy ground of Vrindavan. When Krishna would come home later on from herding the calves, it's described that his whole body and his head were covered with the dust raised by the hooves of the calves and the cows. So Krishna is forever, eternally, supremely clean. But yet, Yashoda Mai, Rohini Devi, they very carefully bathe Krishna and Balaram to make them clean. Just Krishna gives this experience to his mother, just to share this intimately sweet motherly love. So Narada Muni, he saw Nala Kuvera and Manigriva. They were devatas, sons of Kuvera. We know sometimes in this world how people could get mixed up by any type of situation. When your parents are extremely wealthy, there's the tendency to become very much mixed up, to become very proud, arrogant, to expect so much for ourselves. Because sometimes we're just born and raised to get whatever we want. So then we think that whatever I desire should be mine. They were not just wealthy, powerful, famous parents, but Kuvera. Kuvera is the treasurer of the heavenly worlds. That means when demigods need money, they go to Kuvera. Now, some temples I know, the treasurer is, everyone wants to make friends with the treasurer. Because he's dispatching the funds. Even the demigods are coming. Kuvera, please, you are very nice. So Manigriva, Kuvera is a great devotee. He's very pious. Of course, his brother is Ravana, half-brother. So families are not always consistent. But Kuvera tried to raise his children very nicely, but somehow or other, his children, due to bad association, became so arrogant. And when they were in the beautiful heavenly pond with beautiful heavenly ladies, not wearing any clothes, intoxicated with heavenly intoxicants, Narada Muni came by. The girls saw, this is the greatest of saints. Sadhu, we cannot be like this in front of him. So they jumped out of the water and covered themselves. But Nala, Kubera, and Manigriva, who cares for this Narada Muni? We will go on with our enjoyment. Such arrogance, such illusion. Narada Muni was not angry with them, he was compassionate to them. And his compassion, he appeared angry. And he cursed them. You become trees. Then you could stand without clothes on for so much time. And instantly, they became trees. But by Narada Muni's grace, they became trees in a place called Mahavan. But this was long before Krishna appeared, thousands and thousands of years. They were just standing there and standing there. And they got to really understand the mistake they made. Because you can't move. And you really get humble. Taror iva sehishnuna. Trees are tolerant. As demigods, they could not tolerate anything. But now they're standing there, and there's little birds, and they're eating them, and insects are eating them. And sometimes it's cold, and sometimes it's warm, and you can't get warm, and you can't get cool. You're just standing there in the sunshine, and there's nothing they could do. And there wasn't any lady trees. In that sense, they were like brahmacharis in that sense. There was just nothing to enjoy. Because trees enjoy, drinking water through their roots and whatever else they do. But they had the consciousness of the demigods. They had the full awareness of demigod mentality. So it must have been very difficult. But eventually, Krishna was performing his Leela. Eventually, the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj was built right around them. Because Narada Muni understood the future. And by seeing Krishna's pastimes, they became completely purified. And ultimately, Krishna knew exactly what Narada Muni had done and pulled the grinding mortar through the trees, and the trees fell down. And Manigriva and Nalikuvera came out and were so grateful. Yes, it took a long time to get Krishna's darshan. But when they actually had Krishna's darshan, they didn't think that that was a long time. It was nothing but a blessing, nothing but mercy. It was just the right amount of time that they needed to be able to appreciate Krishna. Premanjana chorita bhakti vilochanena. Because so many demons were coming and they were seeing Krishna. But they didn't have love for Krishna. But somehow or other, they became, through the time, perfect devotees. And they surrendered their hearts to Krishna. They gave all credit and all gratitude to Narada Muni. Gratitude is foundational quality for a devotee in order to truly make spiritual progress. We see there were even disturbances at the time of Krishna. But the devotees, there will always be disturbances, always setbacks. That's there for everyone, whoever we are. But a devotee is grateful to Krishna, not necessarily for what's happening. That we might be able to do. But we're grateful to Krishna that He's always there to give us shelter. Even in this situation, Krishna, I'm grateful for the situation because you are in your holy name, ready to give me shelter if I just call out for you. I often give example of Stoka Krishna Prabhu when he was on his deathbed, emaciated, thin, ready to die, so much pain. Everything was going to be wife, child, taken away. He was smiling, so grateful. I don't deserve this. Why is Krishna so kind? He's given me his holy names. I got to chant so many Mahamantras in my life, and I got to be in so many kirtans and so many Guru Pujas and so many Mangalartis, and I got to study Srimad Bhagavatam so many days, and I got to do so much seva in so many ways for Prabhupada and the Vaishnavas. How fortunate, how grateful. So every one of us, we have to go through pain and we have to die. If we're in gratitude, we go back to Godhead. And we find happiness even in difficulties. If we're not grateful, we simply miss the most precious opportunities that are there for us. So after these two trees fell down, Krishna, Kubera, Manigriva, they offered their prayers to Krishna and then they left. Meanwhile, while they were offering their prayers, the whole of Vrindavan, the whole of Gokul Mahavan was completely in trauma. What's just happened? These trees were so huge, the entire earth shook. It made a massive sound. They all came running. Did something happen to Krishna? Did something happen to his friends? Because he's just a little child, just running around. And they saw the two trees, one on either side of Krishna. So soon after this, Upananda, the elder brother of Nanda Maharaj, he called for a special meeting. And he exclaimed that we should leave this place. There's just too many dangers. And he was discussing among other gopas that when Krishna was just a few days old, the Rakshashi Putana attacked. She came to kill Krishna. She disguised herself as a beautiful lady and took Krishna, who was just an infant, and placed her breast in his mouth to give milk. But no one knew that it was covered by the deadliest of poisons. And then she grew into a massive size. Can you imagine a Rakshashi 12 miles high? How fearful is that? Think about it. We read about Putin and we think, oh, just see how Krishna... Think how the Brijabasis were feeling when she assumed this massive form and was running away from the house of Nanda Maharaj with baby Krishna. And suddenly, they didn't know what Krishna did. He sucked her milk, and he actually enjoyed the milk. And he also sucked the poison, and he also sucked her life air, and she fell to the ground. I have to do crazy things to get you to clap. When she fell, they didn't know. All they knew is that she's taking Krishna away, and suddenly the whole ground shakes. Big forests that were actually owned by Kamsa were completely leveled. Krishna somehow or other in her heart made her run to that forest. Krishna can achieve so many purposes in one activity. And then they come running to this giant Putana, and Krishna's just crawling around on top of her body, like, what's happening? And so many little rituals they perform to protect Krishna from further danger. And Upananda and the other cowherd men are discussing, and soon after that, Shakatasura, he appeared in the form of a gigantic cart, filled with all kinds of brass and metal wares. And Krishna was just a couple months old then. He was just learning to lean up. So they did a nice ceremony for him. And Yashoda Mai placed Krishna under the cart, because it's nice and shady and cool. And she went to take care of other people and other chores. And the Sakatasura, he was a ghostly demon. He assumed that form just to fall on top of Krishna and crush him to death. So demoniac. Krishna, little baby, he wasn't even talking, he wasn't even crawling at this time. He understood this. And with his tender little tiny lotus foot, he just kicked. But when a little baby that age kicks, it's just a touch. He just touched with his foot the wheel of the cart. It caused the wheel to be dislocated from the axle, and the whole cart fell to the ground. It made such a noise, such a disturbance. Again, the Brijabasis came running to see what happened. And there, the cart is all in different pieces, and everything on top of it. And right in the middle is little baby Krishna, smiling. So much danger here in Mahavan. And then on Krishna, on his first birthday, there was a nice ceremony, and Yashoda Mai was taking care of Krishna, and to greet some guests, she put him down. Brahmins were doing their yagyas. Kamsa sent Trinavarta. He came in the form of a whirlwind. We have seen how much destruction wind could do. Cyclones, hurricanes, tornadoes. Nothing can stop them. Armies cannot stop tornadoes or hurricanes. Nuclear bombs cannot check their progress. Trinavarta was the most powerful whirlwind. He created so much dust that nobody could see even their hand in front of their eyes. And in that situation, he picked up Krishna to go higher and higher in the sky with the intent to murder him. And Krishna just kept going higher and higher. And Trinavarta naturally is thinking, the higher he's going, the more he's controlling this little boy. Krishna was playing. He had his arm around, little baby arm around Trinavarta's neck, and he squeezed. Now, you mothers, you know what a 1-year-old child, when they squeeze, it's very nice. But this giant Asura, he was being choked. So much choked. He decided, I can't tolerate this. So with all of his might, he was trying to take Krishna and throw him down. But he couldn't move Krishna. Krishna just kept squeezing tighter and tighter and tighter. And just to increase the experience of suffering, every now and then with his feet he would kick Trinavarta. Trinavarta was in total pain. It was unbearable. And finally, he just went unconscious. And Upananda tells, he came crashing down on a giant rock. And his body was all dislocated. He was dead. And now these 2 giant trees have fallen on either side of Krishna. What kind of demons are coming to Vrindavan? What kind of demons are coming here? It's not a safe place. And Gokul is so special. Just by our being here, Gokul is being attacked in so many ways. So for the protection of Krishna, Balaram, and all our children, we should leave this place. Just across the Yamuna is the forest of Vrindavan. Said the forest of Vrindavan is between Nandeshwar and Mahavan. It's interesting because the cowherd man used to live in Nandeshwar, Nanda Maharaj, and he moved to Gokul because he wasn't having children. He thought it would be a more auspicious place to have a child. And just between the two is the beautiful forest of Vrindavan, where our cows could graze in the beautiful pastures and the forests, and we could be very happy there. So everyone agreed. And this is where today's verse leads us. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining so many disturbances in Gokul Mahaban. Even in the presence of Balaram, Garga Muni, in that very secret name-giving ceremony in the Goshala of Mahaban, he gave the name of Rohini's son, Baladev, because he has supernatural spiritual strength, infinite spiritual strength. And he's Balaram because he really enjoys manifesting that strength. And all the residents of Vrindavan will be so very, very happy to see him express his limitless spiritual strength. So Krishna and Balaram, when they were being moved to Vrindavan forest, it's a beautiful scene described by Sukadev Goswami. The elderly people, the ladies, the children, the mothers, they all got on carts, wagons pulled by oxen. And the cows and the calves and the bulls were in the front. And the elder cowherd men, they held bows and arrows, and they all went toward Vrindavan. Why did they have bows and arrows? They're cowherd men. They weren't Kshatriyas. But still, they have to protect the ladies, they have to protect the children, they have to protect the older people, they have to protect the cows. And whoever you are in this world, there's going to be dangers. So even Krishna in Gokul, Nanda, Yashoda, Rohini, and all of the Brijabasis, so many disturbances. Wherever they went, there were so many disturbances. And yet we're thinking, if I become Krishna conscious, there will be no disturbances. I'm sorry. It's not true. As long as we're in this material world, from the highest planet to the lowest, there are disturbances. But the difference is a devotee takes shelter of Krishna in those disturbances and rises above the dualities. What is Yam hi na vyatyante te purusham purusharshava samaduka sukham dhiram somaratai valakalpate. Krishna tells in the Gita, one who tolerates happiness and distress and all of these various dualities and is steady in both, that person is fit for liberation. Tatenu kampam susamikshamano bunjana evatma kritam vibhagam. The same principle is given in Srimad Bhagavatam, that when disturbances come and one with a grateful heart says, Krishna, thank you, I'm yours, and seek shelter of Krishna, for that person, liberation is the rightful claim. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he proclaimed that the obstacles, the disturbances that come on the path of devotion are our friends, because they humble us. And we understand that we need the higher power of Krishna's mercy, of Guru's mercy, of the Vaishnava's mercy in such a situation. Srila Prabhupada told us that we pray to Lord Balaram for spiritual strength, because there will be so many tests, challenges, problems that come in our life. Whatever our varna, whatever our ashram, whoever we are. And what is the strength? It's not the physical strength to try to conquer someone, because that never lasts. The strength we're talking about is this. Balaram is the original guru, the spiritual master. He is giving us that strength of Balaram through his instructions. His divine grace, we say, of Srila Prabhupada. His divine grace is Balaram's divine grace, Radharani's divine grace, Krishna's divine grace, flowing perfectly through Srila Prabhupada and the instructions he's given us. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevya. How do we access that strength? We pray for it, but then in our prayer, it is important we have the determination and the will to receive it. By humbling ourselves, by hearing. We humble ourselves before we hear, which means I don't know, you know. Otherwise, if we think I know, but I just want to get some nice data and information so I could give a nice lecture, or so I could show my friends and my others how much I know. That's not what Krishna is saying. We humble ourselves. We feel a need to know. When a child cries out for the strength of her mother or father, the child is not doing it as a formality. She needs that strength. That's how Arjuna was hearing Bhagavad Gita. That is how Parikshit Maharaj was hearing from Shukadev Goswami. And in the end of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 11th canto, Krishna is about to eliminate the Yadu dynasty, and he's about to leave the world with Balaram. And Uddhava, his best friend, knows exactly what's happening. He sees it. He feels it. He's in total desperation. He comes to Krishna. You're about to leave? You're about to take everyone I know and love away? And you want to keep me here? And Krishna spoke the Uddhava Gita. Uddhava was really receptive. So that is what Krishna says. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. We hear submissively and sevaya. And we follow the instructions. That is called service, seva. And in this way, a self-realized soul imparts knowledge, and we are receptive to receive it. and disturbances that come. Happiness. And this is an interesting analogy. Krishna, yam hi navyati yante te purusham purushashava samadukha sukham dhiram. That means distress, disturbance. So many things cause distress. Pain of the body, pain of the mind, dishonor, disease, failure, defeat, the loss of a loved one. There are limitless ways of getting distress in this world, of being disturbed. Krishna doesn't say that the path of liberation is to be in such a state that there's no distress. The path is to remain steady in our devotional service, in our faithfulness to our Guru, to the Vaishnavas, and to Krishna, and to Sri Radha, whatever it may be. We read in our Vaishnav histories about pujaris. They're worshiping the deity, and sometimes they have high fever, and sometimes they're so old they're about to die, but they're still offering their seva. And Srila Prabhupada, as a preacher, whether he was in good health or poor health, sometimes we're unable to do what we want to do by circumstances. But our will and our efforts are still there. We're steady in our faith. We're steady in our will to serve. For such a devotee, when disturbances come, thank you, Krishna, I'm yours. That is the path of the highest liberation. And we rise above the distress. Even in the midst of the muddiest waters, the lotus flower is beautiful and fragrant. So similarly, when we truly take shelter of Krishna, gradually, even when disturbances come, we rise above them. Shukadeva Goswami tells here in Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto that Krishna and Balaram were so naughty. They were so mischievous. They were always exploring ways, newer ways, older ways, every possible way to put Yashoda and Rohini in anxiety. That's the way babies are in general, but Krishna and Balaram were the supreme babies. Yashoda and Rohini, they would think of their little children before they knew how to walk, when they were still crawling. They would just crawl off. And they'd see these gigantic horns of the bulls and the cows and the hard hoofs. What if a bull steps on Krishna and Balaram? They're just crawling around under their feet. Or what if they get lifted up and stabbed by their horns? And there's monkeys, and the monkeys have such sharp teeth and such sharp claws, and sometimes Krishna and Balaram they grab the tail of the monkey. And then there's dogs with cats and thorns on the ground and weapons that people leave behind, sharp swords. Shukadeva Goswami tells so beautifully that Rohini Devi and Yashoda Mai were constantly in the transcendental ecstasy called anxiety due to affection. Isn't that beautiful? The transcendental ecstasy of being in anxiety constantly. Their anxiety practically never left them. So why would anyone aspire for that? Because their anxiety, on the physical level, there was anxiety, but deep inside it was only increasing their love for Krishna. Only increasing their care for Krishna. So similarly, in our Krishna consciousness movement, sometimes there's dangers to Krishna. The pujari fears some danger to the deity. And devotees fear for the safety of other devotees who are Krishna's beloved children. So when this anxiety, when we remain steady in our faith and in our devotion and in our service, then that anxiety is an ecstasy beyond liberation. Radhanath Das Goswami prays that millions and billions and trillions, tens and millions, he says, of times more ecstatic than Brahmananda, than impersonal liberation, is to be in anxiety for Krishna. Krishna is more pleased with the gopis chastising him with harsh words than he is with the Brahmins chanting Vedic mantras. Because it's with love. He is Rasa Vihari, Rasa Raj. And for a devotee, the nice times and the hard times are all opportunities to take shelter of Krishna, to increase our love, to please Krishna. But there's something we have to understand, which is not easy. When we speak about these disturbances, it's not a disturbance if it's the type of disturbance that you like. If you have a list where you can choose your disturbances, those aren't disturbances. It's only when it's really what you don't like, it's really what you don't want, it's really, oh no. Then it's categorized as a disturbance. And those are opportunities. Because in this material world they come. Happiness, distress, pleasure, pain. But a devotee knows the art, how to rise above them by becoming purified by remembering Krishna. And especially by chanting his holy name. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Example is given when we please Krishna, we become truly happy. Just like When you decorate your own face, then your reflection in the mirror is decorated very nicely. If you decorate the reflection in the mirror, it's kind of strange, isn't it? But that's what the whole world is doing. Everyone in the world is looking at the reflection of who they are in the mirror, and they're putting makeup and cosmetics and nice jewelry and crowns and everything on the reflection in the mirror. But then if you move a little, it doesn't fit anymore. Because it's not you. But if you take care of your true self, then the reflection automatically. Similarly, when we water the root of the tree is really satisfied. So in all situations, how to please Krishna. That is what brings actual happiness. We can actually deeply be happy even in disturbance, and even in the nice times. If sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. If we learn to surrender to Krishna with a grateful heart. They arrived in Vrindavan forest. When Krishna and Balaram saw with their eyes the forest of Vrindavan, the river Yamuna, and the Govardhan hill, they were very, very pleased. The Brajavasis, they were just living kind of on the road, even though there were no roads. They just set up their ox carts, kind of like a half moon. And the whole of Vrindavan was just living there. And they would move around until they gradually came to Nandagaon. But it was then, while they were in Vrindavan, when Krishna and Balaram were small children, that they gave them the charge of the calves. And Srila Prabhupada explains the importance of a proper view of education. Because it's not that that Nanda Maharaj needed his children to go out and work in order to maintain the household. Sometimes it's like that. Families are struggling and the children, you have to go out and work to save us from poverty. But Nanda, Yashoda, the whole of Vrindavan, Nanda and Yashoda were the king and queen of Vrindavan. He's Brajendra Nandan, he's Brajendra. And Brajeshwari, but out of love for their children, so they could learn and be happy, they served by taking care of the calves. By engaging people according to the propensities in exciting ways is the Vedic form of education. Krishna, Balaram, and the Gopas, they were playing while they were taking care of the calves. Their work and their play was non-different from each other. And how did they play? There was limitless ways, it explains. They would play their flutes. They would play bugles and horns. Sometimes the cowherd boys would see nice fruits in the trees. And they'd take stones and throw the stones to knock the fruit down from the tree. And sometimes if the fruit did not fall, they'd tie a rope to the stone, and they'd throw the stone at the fruit, and then the rope would wrap around the fruit, and they'd pull the fruit down, and the amalaki fruits, the Baal fruits, they played football. So many ball games they played. These wonderful Vrindavan fruits. And other times they would cover their bodies with blankets and pretend to be bulls. And two cowherd boys in their bull forms would start. They would roar at each other and start having fights. Playful fights. And with their voices, they would imitate all the different animals that they would see, and all the birds, and the peacocks, and the cuckoos, and the monkeys, and the swans, and the ducks. One day, a particular asura who was sent by Kamsa devised a way to kill Krishna and Balaram. This person was so wicked, so deceiving, so envious. Instead of coming to Krishna in his full-fledged form and say, "Krishna, fight with me," which is what some demons would do, this demon disguised himself by actually changing the form of his body into a little sweet, innocent-looking calf. Little baby calf. Nothing is more innocent and melting to the heart for a devotee than a little calf. At our Govardhan eco-village, sometimes I go there just when a calf is born. And the little calf is looking around, and her eyes are just so totally innocent and full of wonder. She's just looking around. She just comes out of her mother cow's body. She's going, and the mother is licking the calf and licking the calf, and the calf is it's so sweet. And usually for the first week or so after the calf is born, most mothers don't let humans or anyone else come near the calf because they're so worried about the calf. It's incredible. I've seen guests come to Govardhan Eco Village, and they see this little calf that was just born the day before, and they just want to go and pet it and kiss it and all other things. And they come toward the calf, and the mother she starts attacking them with the horns. And these are cows. Usually these cows are so peaceful and so mild. But that's a mother's love. One time I went to the calf, and the mother started charging at me. And I was so happy. I was thinking, just see the mother's love. How could we think that these are not sentient, loving beings with souls? So Vatsasura takes the form of a little calf and is playing the role just right. And Krishna and Balaram, little boys, they're playing, and Krishna indicates to Balaram that this little calf looks, and if a demon has the mystic powers to become a calf, you know he's going to be a really beautiful, pretty, sweet little calf. Krishna indicated to Balaram, this is a demon. But then Krishna pretended that he didn't know anything. Yayatamam prapadyante. According to how we approach Krishna, he reciprocates accordingly. So this demon wanted to be in disguise. He was hiding his intentions to kill Krishna. So Krishna went up to the calf and just looked at the calf with so much love and affection, hiding his intention to kill the calf, the demon. And Krishna, calf really understood. Krishna doesn't recognize. He's looking at me with so much affection. I'm going to kill him. And then Krishna just secretly went behind the calf and grabbed the tails and the leg of the calf and swirled him around over his head. And the calf, the demon, died. Krishna doesn't need Sudarshan chakras or bows and arrows. Just like it's playful. Children like to swirl things. Yes? Just like the more he was swirling, the more fun it was. And all the boys were thinking, Krishna's swirling this calf around. And after he died, Krishna threw the calf to the top of a kapita tree. And at that point, Vatsasura assumed his original form of a giant Rakshasa Asura. Why did Krishna throw the body of Vatsasura on top of a kapita tree? Because kapita fruits are very delicious. And on that tree, the fruits were perfectly ripe. And Krishna wanted to eat the fruits with his friends. So in one sense, killing the demon was a detail. The real thing was to get the fruits to come down from the tree so we can eat them. But after Vatsasura was liberated, he achieved mukti. The demigods showered Krishna with flowers. Kettle drums were playing. And the children were all dancing around Krishna along with Balaram, saying, well done, very good. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam. Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita that he descends in this world to protect the pious, to annihilate the miscreants, and to reestablish true dharma. But in Vrindavan, Krishna does it in such a way that it all becomes part of his play. Krishna and Balaram, they would play so many beautiful, wonderful games throughout the day. They would be dancing, they would singing, and taking care of the calves at that time was just a part of their play. It was so exciting. And every day some demons would come, and it never interfered with Krishna's play. It just became Krishna was fulfilling all his promises in Bhagavad Gita, while he was simultaneously simply enjoying with his devotees and giving the highest enjoyment to his devotees. Thakur Bhaktivinoda tells that Vatsasura represents the obstacle for pure devotional service. of this childish mentality. Childish is different than childlike. Little calf, he was in such an innocent form, but he had such wicked motivations. So deceiving. We all have those propensities. And to take shelter of Krishna, take shelter of Vaishnavas, Guru, and the holy names is the only way to overcome them. One day, Krishna and Balaram came to a beautiful reservoir of water. And the cowherd boys brought the calves. The calves were drinking, the boys were drinking. They were sitting on the banks of this reservoir. It was in a forest of Brajbhumi called Kadiravan. There they saw something that was horrifying. There was this living creature that was slowly moving, that was the size of a mountain. It had the form of a huge duck with a long pointed beak. Suddenly, this mountain just leaped over and swallowed Krishna. Balaram and the Gopas, they were on the verge of falling unconscious. They had never seen anything like this before. Krishna was swallowed. And because of his affection, his brotherly love as the elder brother of Krishna, Dauji, Balaram, he was actually feeling bewildered. He's the knower of everything, past, present, and future. But out of the intimacy of love, even he was bewildered. How could they even survive? How could they live? Krishna was swallowed by this mountainous demon. Krishna's body is so soft and so cool, like a lotus flower. His limbs are softer and smoother than the petals of a beautiful lotus flower. But yet, at the base of Bakasura's throat, Krishna assumed his Brahmajyoti. He was so hard and so unbearably hot. Krishna's sweeter than the sweetest. But to Bakasura, he was so bitter. The bitterness was unbearable. The heat was unbearable. He didn't even need to come out of the mouth. He just made Bakasura feel so totally miserable due to the heat and the bitterness and the hardness of Krishna's presence that Bakasura vomited. I'm not going to make any special effects. I'm inclined to, but he vomited, and Krishna comes tumbling out of his mouth. Bakasura couldn't believe what he saw. Krishna was perfectly fresh and perfectly in condition. He didn't cause any harm or damage to Krishna. This outraged him. With all of his force and his massive pointed beak, he tried to stab Krishna. And Krishna just, to make it exciting for his friends, he just at the last moment before this massive, mountainous, razor-sharp, pointed beak was about to penetrate Krishna, Krishna would move. And then Bakasura again. And Krishna would just move in time. And Krishna was smiling the whole time. He was dancing around. And he kept moving, and Bakasura kept trying to kill him. And at this point, Balaram and the cowherd boys, they couldn't survive. They were on the verge of just giving up their consciousness. And Krishna very effortlessly smiled upon all of his friends, and he took the bottom part of the beak with one hand and the upper part of the beak with the other hand and pulled. There's so many things we can do with a good sound system. He bifurcated. He just tore him in half. And Bakasura was liberated. And the friends, Balaram and Gopas, it was like they came back to life. And they came to Krishna, they all embraced him and cried out, "Sadhu, sadhu, very nice, very good, well done, Krishna." And the demigods, they were showering malika flowers, very fragrant flowers that were selectively plucked from Indra's Nandana garden. And when the Gopas saw all these malika flowers showering on Krishna, they even became more happy. There was a great celebration. And they came back into Vrindavan singing in beautiful poetry the pastimes of Krishna. In Vrindavan, whatever Krishna would do, at every moment, it was so attractive, it was so pleasing, it awakened so much love that the Brijabasis would compose beautiful poetry. Or they would tell the stories to some poetic Brahmin and get him to make poetry. They would sing. So they all came back into the village of Brajbhumi, where all the elder Gopas and Gopis were waiting for them, and they would be singing these beautiful, wonderful, mesmerizing songs about Krishna. Sravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting. That is the eternal activity of all the residents of the spiritual world. Sravanam Kirtanam. Rohini Devi, Yashoda Mai, they couldn't be separated from Krishna for even a moment. Either they were bathing them or feeding them or putting clothes on them or putting them to rest or feeding milk from their own bodies, embracing them. And when they were not physically with them, they were constantly remembering them at every moment, especially by hearing about their beautiful pastimes and by singing their pastimes. Anything that happened to Krishna, anything that Krishna did was beyond historical. If a little breeze made Krishna's hair move, they could write so many wonderful songs and have a whole festival and celebrate that. That was their love for Krishna. It wasn't just the big things. Yes, he killed Bakasura. But just his smile, just his lifting of his eyebrow, just the way Yashodamai decorated him, just that one of his friends put a leaf from a tree of the forest in his hair. Everything Krishna would do was all attractive, would mesmerize the hearts of all the Brajavasis with love. Baka represents cunning duplicity. Should I continue? One day Krishna decided to have a picnic with his friends early in the morning. So he got up he came out especially early and blew his bugle. And all of his friends started coming to join him. Srimad Bhagavatam tells there were hundreds and thousands of cowherd boys. And the cowherd boys had hundreds and thousands of groups of calves. The word Sukadeva Goswami uses asankyata. That means unlimited. Asankyata means whatever we can, with our computers or with our minds, calculate as far as a number. It was beyond that. You know, we can say millions, billions, trillions, quadrillions. That's as far as I know. But the amount of calves that were with Krishna in his herd was beyond that. At the same time, because Krishna is Achintya Shakti, because he's the absolute truth, the supreme controller of all controllers, whatever he pleases to do, he does. It's not that they were like today. It seems really crowded. How many people are here today? 3,000.
Some are down.
How many?
Total 2,500.
Okay. It's very small particle of asankyata. There's a few thousand people here. And yet, you know, some of you are hot and some of you are crowded, and when it comes for the kirtan at the end, some of you will be stepping on each other and crushing each other and bouncing off each other, and some of you just want to escape. So how asankyata, beyond quadrillions of calves, can be in the little forest of Vrindavan? Because Krishna could make the space limitless, even within a space. If Krishna wants to do so, he could put, and please understand, this is Krishna. If he could create the entire cosmic manifestation, Krishna could put the entire population of the entire Earth planet in this temple room. And everybody would have beautiful pastures to herd their cows in. That's Krishna. That's why we love Krishna. And we love Krishna because he can do all of those things, and at the same time, he makes himself feel dependent on his devotees' love. So Krishna went into the cowherd pastures with all of his calves. He would go to a distant place and he'd stand looking at the scenery of Vrindavan. And oh, how he would be happy to see the kalpabriksha trees, the chintamani soil, the beautiful hills, Yamuna River. And as he'd be looking and just enjoying limitlessly the beauty of Vrindavan, one Gopa would say, "I will be the first to touch Krishna." And he'd run to Krishna. Another Gopa would say, "I will be the first to touch Krishna." And he would run, and all these hundreds and thousands of Gopas, they're all running, saying, "I will be the first to touch Krishna." And it doesn't go into too many details about this, but it appears that everyone thought that they were the first to touch Krishna. And no one was crashing. It wasn't like, last night, trying to leave this place, they were making all these human chains and everything like this. But here's limitless gopas, and they're all running together, and it's completely nice. They would play so many wonderful games. They would play their flutes, they would play their bugles, they would imitate the sounds of the buzzing of the bees. They would imitate the sounds of the singing of the cuckoo birds. I'm sorry to say this, but you sound like jackals. Please try again. Very good. Very good. But they were like cuckoo birds and bees that were singing for the pleasure of Krishna. And then they would see a bird flying in the sky, and they'd follow the shadow of the bird and bring their arms out and make it like that they were running and flying just like the bird. They would imitate the very graceful movements of the swan. And they'd see ducks sitting down very silently. They would sit next to the ducks silently. You could probably do that one nicely. They would see the peacocks dancing. They would dance just like the peacocks and sing just like the peacocks. imitating monkeys, they would jump from branch to branch. And since you're all very enthusiastic, they would imitate the singing of the monkeys. Just like that. They'd go near a pond of water and frogs. They'd hop just like the frogs. In fact, they'd be hopping right next to the frog, and the frog would become so afraid they'd jump in the water, and then the cowherd boys would jump in the water just like the frogs, after the frogs. And meanwhile, they'd croak like frogs. They'd see their reflection in a pond of water. And seeing the reflection, they would laugh at the reflection. Then they'd go to a well, and they'd call out, making sounds, and the echoes would come back. And they would start chastising the echo. Sometimes they would make make-believe bridges, just with nothing. They would make bridges across the rivers, bridges across the lakes. And Shukadev Goswami tells, no one can estimate the good fortune of the cowherd boys. How many lifetimes of the highest pious activities in the form of devotional service that one needs to perform to be Krishna's friend, playing so intimately these loving games. They do not see Krishna as the highest supreme personality of Godhead, the Parabrahman. They realized that long ago. They're beyond that. Now the Parabrahman is becoming just their most intimate, loving friend to play with them. And they're playing with Krishna. Those on the path of Astanga Yoga, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. Those who are on the path of Gyan, studying scriptures, memorizing scriptures, discriminating between matter and spirit. The pleasures that they get from their yogic siddhis and their liberated state can never reach the heights of the pleasure of the Brajavasis, who are seeing the absolute truth face to face, who see the beautiful smile and glance of Krishna, who gives his life for them, and they give their life for him. The games of the Gopas were just so infinitely, ever increasingly enjoyable that it's it would be impossible for them to stop playing. When it was lunchtime, how would they stop playing to eat lunch? By the Lila Shakti of the Lord, she would allow entrance of a demon every day around that time. On one particular day, there was an asura. His name, Aga. He was seeing how much fun Krishna and the cowherd boys were having. It was intolerable to him. It made him so envious. He was a servant of Kamsa, whose specific mission was to kill Krishna. His elder sister was Putana. His elder brother was Bakasura. Krishna killed both of them. He wanted revenge. He decided, for the pleasure of my departed brother and sister, Baka and Putana, I will offer the sesame seeds and water of the last rites in the form of not only killing Krishna, but killing every Brijabasi, every cow, every living being in the whole Vrindavan. That's how angry he was. And he made a plot, because he was extremely intelligent. If I kill all the Gopas, because they are the life of their parents and everyone else in Vrindavan, without the life, the body cannot survive. I will kill all the Gopas here, and then in separation from them, everyone else in Vrindavan will die. This was serious genocide. His intent was to eliminate forever the whole race of the Brijavasis. And his plan, how to do that. He assumed the form of a snake, 8 miles long. This snake, his lower lip was on the ground, his higher lip was in the clouds. He was a python snake. And with his mouth open, he just waited for all the cowherd boys and all their calves. Because all the cows and bulls will die if the calves are gone. He waited to swallow them. So the Gopas see Agasura. They were thinking, what is this? It looks like a cave. It looks like an incredible cave. Let's go in. And some of them started running toward the cave, and of course the calves were going with them. And some Gopas were thinking, they shouted out, it's not a cave, that's a demon. They started running away, and the other Gopas said, why are you afraid? If you run away, we're not going to play with you. It kind of looks like a snake. They were talking among themselves. Maybe this is some incredible statue that has been put like a playground for us to play in the beautiful forest pastures of Vrindavan. And others, they were arguing, not exactly arguing, they were exclaiming, But what if it is alive? What if it really is a snake? They were looking up, that the lip, that his mouth is like a massive cave. And his tongue is like a superhighway. And his teeth are like snow-capped mountain peaks. And his breath, because he devours so many different types of people and animals, that wind coming out that smells so terrible is his bad breath. But let's go in, because then we get to see how Krishna protects us. So that was their final decision. So in this way they went dancing into the mouth of Aghasura. And meanwhile Krishna, he knew who Aghasura was. He was so wicked, he was so powerful, he was so cruel that the demigods, even though they drink somaras, they were always in fear, constantly in fear of Aghasura. So Krishna was deciding, how am I going to stop them from going in? And he was just about to do so. But before he could, the gopas were clapping their hands, laughing very blissfully, smiling upon Krishna, and dancing into the mouth of Aghasura. And suddenly all the calves and all the cowherd boys were in Agha's body. Now, you know pythons. What they do is they swallow animals a lot, just in whole, and then they have these internal muscles of some sort that crush them to death, and crush them, and ultimately digest them. So after all the boys were in the dark, deadly mouth of Agha, he kept his mouth open. He was waiting for Krishna. And Krishna was thinking, Srimad Bhagavatam tells, he was wondering, how am I going to kill this demon without hurting all my friends? Because they're inside of him. And he paused for some time. And then Krishna entered the mouth of Aghasura. And the demigods cried, alas. And Kamsa and his followers began to sing and celebrate as Aghasura, he closed his mouth. It was totally pitch dark. Now we find in Krishna's Leelas in Vrindavan, Krishna never changed his form or used any weapons, because that would disturb the intimate rasas or loving relationships. Putana got bigger and bigger, but Krishna remained the same little baby with Trinavarta, with Bakasura, with Vatsasura. Krishna always kept his same little innocent Krishna form, and just in playful ways with his hands, he would kill the demons. But Aghasura, because all the children in the mouth were dead, they were unconscious, and nobody else could see Krishna because he was inside. Krishna exhibited his Aishwarya. He expanded his size. gigantic size. And Aghasura's feeling Krishna becoming larger and larger and larger and stopping his capacity to breathe. Aghasura expanded bigger and Krishna expanded bigger. Expanded, Krishna expanded, and ultimately Krishna blocked all the possibility of Aghasura to breathe. And there was no place for his life air to even leave his body. In that suffocated state, he died, and his life air, his soul, burst from a hole in the top of his head and entered into the sky. His mouth then opened. Krishna, seeing all the calves and all his friends laying there dead, he glanced upon them and brought them back to life. And then all the friends, all the gopas, all the calves, they all blissfully looking at Krishna, they danced outside of the mouth of Agha. And after everyone else had exited, then Krishna came out. Demigods were all watching. Something incredible happened. The Atma, the Jiva of Agha, in the form of a light, remained in the sky. As soon as Krishna came out of his dead corpse, he entered into the body of Krishna. He attained Sarupya Mukti, where he was given the liberation to be an eternal associate of the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world. Most asuras, they're given impersonal liberation into the Brahmajyoti. Only if you develop love for Krishna can you get this Sarupya Mukti of taking a spiritual form like the Lord in the spiritual world. Putana, she achieved the destination of being Krishna's mother, a nurse assistant of Yashoda in the spiritual world. Because at that last moment, as Krishna was sucking her breast, Krishna drank her milk, just a mother, and she had just a moment of motherly affection for Krishna. And similarly, Aghasura, he associated with the cowherd boys when they were having so many playful games and they were so happy. And when they went in his mouth, they were totally blissful. And Krishna was so blissful. So at the last moment of Aghasura's life, being affected by all the happiness of the gopas and Krishna, he actually felt happiness in their association. And just by that moment of feeling happiness for Krishna and his friends, he was given the liberation of being an eternal associate of Krishna in the spiritual world. Our acharyas tell, even Aghasura was so demoniac and so cruel and so wicked, but just by letting Krishna inside of him and feeling that happiness, and he was giving the devotees happiness because they really liked his form of Aghasura. They blissfully were playing when they went inside. What to speak of a devotee who through hearing and chanting and seva are trying to always remember Krishna within their hearts with love. How Krishna will give us the supreme liberation. Shukadev Goswami told Parikshit Maharaj that the pastime of the liberation of Aghasura happened while Krishna and the Gopas were in their Kumara age. From their birth up till 5 years old. And all the Vrajabasis, they heard that story and were singing the glories of that story at the time when Krishna and Balaram were in their Poganda age. That means 1 year later. Parikshit Maharaj was really inquisitively fascinated. How is this possible? That they were singing the glories of this pastime of the liberation of Agha 1 year later, as if it happened the same day. And Parikshit Maharaj begins the next story. But we will end here. But it's nice to end with eagerness and anticipation for what Krishna will do next. Thank you very much.
Question answer session. As it is difficult to pass out mic here, we request devotees to kindly write your questions on a sheet of paper and pass it on here. We have a team of devotees who will assist you in asking these questions. So here is first question, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj, for a dimensional nectarian experience of Krishna Leela. Maharaj, as you explained, so many demons disguised themselves and came to Vrindavan. They were so expert that even Brajavasis could not identify them and thought Putana to be goddess Lakshmi. Similarly, in current times, we may also be distracted thinking Maya to be Krishna. How to identify these subtle disguised distractions?
Read the end.
In current times, we may be distracted thinking Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
नहीं इस समय खराब हुआ है
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, the question is, as you explained, so many demons disguised themselves and came to Vrindavan. They were so expertly disguised that even Vrajavasis could not identify them and they thought Putana to be Lakshmi. Similarly, in current times, we may also be distracted thinking Maya to be Krishna. How to identify and get over these subtle disguised distractions?
For that lesson to be understood, that is why these leelas are revealed to us. Vatsasura appeared like a little calf, so most innocent person in the world. Pralambasura appeared to be just in the exact form of one of Krishna's dear friends. Putana appeared as a most beautiful, compassionate, motherly lady. Maya is always there to deceive us. Knowing that, a devotee understands how important it is to associate with devotees. Hearing and chanting and the association of devotees can save us from the greatest dangers. Bharat Maharaj was such a great king, he was so detached. He left his whole family, his kingdom, his power, and then he was bewildered by a little deer. He became so attached. Bharat Maharaj had no association of devotees. If there was any devotee sangam around, they would have said, Bharat, you're in Maya. So without the association of devotees, nasta prayeshya bhadreshu nityam bhagavati sevaya, without regularly hearing to develop the proper vivek, the proper discrimination, then we are inevitably bound by Maya, who will appear as our best friend, who will appear as our well-wisher, who will give us so many promises that are simply meant for our suffering. So we need to take shelter. Shelter of Krishna in His name. Take shelter of Krishna in Krishna Katha and the association of His devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, in your talk you were talking about how, or even the Bhagavatam has this mood that a devotee is welcoming, various problems in life. Like Kunti Maharani is praying, or Brahma is praying Tattenu Kampam. You are also saying that whenever there are disturbances, we see that as opportunities and we welcome them. However, we also see that in the world, when a disturbance comes, the first thing any person tries to do is to get rid of that. Like in this pastime also we see the Vrajavasis, when in Gokul Mahavan there were so many demons coming, the first thing they wanted to change the place itself. They wanted to move away from Gokul Mahavan to some other place. So even if we have a small headache or any problem, first we are trying to think of how to get rid of that disturbance. But at the same time, Bhagavatam has this mood that a devotee welcomes disturbances as a way of, he feels more sheltered in Krishna in that. So how do we simultaneously, externally work on removing the disturbance, whereas internally welcome them, as in?
Queen Kunti prayed to Krishna, Vipadashantuta Shashvata Tratatra Jagatguru, that Krishna, please let calamities come again and again, because whenever calamities come, I have no one else to turn to except you. And when I turn to you, you are there. I'm with you. You're with me. That is a very advanced platform. We can speak that verse in our classes, and when somebody's having difficulties, we could recite that verse to them. But when calamities comes, It's not that easy. So we may not pray for calamities to come. We naturally try to avoid calamities. We naturally try to fix them when they do appear. But they will come, inevitably. Srila Prabhupada even said, you do not have to pray for calamities like Kunti Devi, because they're going to come anyway, whether you pray or not. They do come, we take shelter of Krishna. Of course, we have to try to fix things. Because as devotees, if we accept that everything is Krishna's property, and we're trying to use everything in Krishna's service, and everyone is Krishna's child, and we're paradukkha dukhi, we're meant to feel the happiness for others and feel the pain of others. So when we see someone in a painful condition, or we see Krishna's property potentially exploited or destroyed, then it's our service to try to protect it. It's our service to try to fix it. This body is Krishna's body. This body is here to be used in Krishna's service. Srila Prabhupada ended his letters, I hope this meets you in the best of health. And he's speaking of physical health, emotional health, and spiritual health. And by his own actions. When devotees were ill, Srila Prabhupada was very careful that they take the proper medicines or they get the proper treatments. I believe it was His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami. He was in a hospital, I think in Mumbai, Jaslok Hospital. Prabhupada sent him there because he was ill, and Prabhupada came to visit him. So Prabhupada wanted us to take care of our bodies. And in 1972, when some people attacked one of our temples and broke the deities and shot with guns some of our devotees, Srila Prabhupada said, the devotees are Krishna's devotees, and the deities are Krishna. And it's our duty to defend them. So Srila Prabhupada wanted our devotees to have the facility to protect and defend. And all the temples were activated in that way with security forces. So we are not complacent about the exploitation or destruction of Krishna's property. Time destroys everything. And in our temples, as things get old, it's not where we just let them fall apart. We're constantly renovating and making them strong again, because it's Krishna's property. So there's always going to be calamities. And it's our service to Krishna to act. When we're sick, it's our service to try to make our body healthy again. When our loved ones or our god brothers or god sisters or any Vaishnava is sick, it's our service to try to help them. When devotees are in emotional distress, we don't just say, it's Krishna's arrangement. We try to help that devotee. So this is our duty. But along with the calamity, we understand that ultimately we're not in control. Ultimately, Srila Prabhupada gives examples so many times. Even if your most loved one in life is ill, even if you're a millionaire and a billionaire and you have the best doctor in the world, Still, they may die. And someone in a little village could have the same disease. Just take some coconut water and get better. Because ultimately, Krishna is the supreme controller. We just have to try our best. So calamities come, we have to act. The calamity in Kurukshetra, it was a benediction. In the calamity of Kurukshetra, the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. But still, Arjuna fought the war. When Parikshit was cursed to die, it was a calamity. But still, he fasted, and he took the medicine of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam for 7 days. So disturbances increase our awareness of the necessity to take shelter of Krishna's names. The necessity to take shelter of Krishna. In the beautiful stories of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So while we're performing our duty as able and as efficiently as we can, the disturbances do not discourage us from performing our duty. We chant at least 16 rounds every day. We hear from the Srimad Bhagavatam every day. We follow these principles of devotional service. We seek out, with necessity and gratitude, the association of devotees who give us faith, who inspire us. And in that way, the calamities of life are blessings. Practically every story is within the framework of calamities. The Pandavas, Prahlad, Ambarish, Gajendra, the Prachetas, Kunti, Bhishma, Dhruva, Hanuman, Bharat. Practically every story the scripture gives us is in the context of calamity. And how devotees respond. And how they become purified and liberated. And how they're always turning to Krishna. And even in Vrindavan, where they're enjoying the highest ecstasies of love of God. In this material world in Vrindavan, the Bhoma Vrindavan, every day there's demons coming. And it's only increasing their love for Krishna. And they never stop serving Krishna. In the spiritual world, there's no need for calamities. But in this material world, it's part of the path of how we respond to them. Responsibly. And Srila Prabhupada really appreciated taking responsibility. Finances, so many requirements. If devotees are, Krishna will take care. Yes, Krishna will take care. But God helps them who help themselves. Arjuna didn't say to Krishna, you fight the war. Too much disturbance. Krishna, Arjuna understood, yes, I'm totally dependent on Krishna, but I have to do my part. And taking that responsibility for Krishna's devotees, for Krishna's temple, is a wonderful format by which we can become truly Krishna conscious in the face of the inevitable disturbances that come. If we're sincere in Krishna consciousness, the happy moments bring us closer to Krishna, and the challenges also bring us closer to Krishna. And sometimes, for some time, they may just be too unbearable and too difficult. But in due course of time, Krishna will give us the opportunity to learn our lesson. And then when we come back to the actual understanding and the actual connection of taking it as Krishna's mercy, then everything we've been through it becomes a benediction. We will have kirtan now. Thank you.